guys, back with another video. Today, before we start this video, make sure to go check out my Patreon down below. This is how you're going to support the channel. Otherwise, make sure to hit up my personal Discord, which is also just Xvic, for carries, coaching, really anything. I sell every single service, and that's pretty much that. So if you're interested in that, make sure to go hit me up. Otherwise, enjoy the video. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, now we're back to the video. If you've already saw the title, you know this is a solo shuffle tier list. Now, in the future, things will be changing. For example, Frostic and Sub-Rogue are getting a massive nerf. Shadowy Dolt and their AoE stuns are, being gutted. So, we'll be doing a lot of tier lists towards the end of the start of the new season. That way everyone knows what's going on. But this is going to be the current situation on all these classes, and that's pretty much that. So, if we're done talking here, let's get on with the video. I had to get some nice good old ice cold water. So the first one we're going to be talking about is Affliction Warlock. It's going to be S tier. Um, that's kind of just a no-brainer at this point. It's just really good. Um, I believe that it still has the capabilities of being the best spec in the game. I think it's just too strong. I think offensively and defensively, its port being literally 30 seconds, basically, especially if you're running the PvP talent, you're pretty much saving all. You're never able to die because if somebody wants to chase you, you're just allowing his other teammates to just you're just taking infinite amount of damage. So even if they're running away, you're still dying. And if you push in, it means okay, well now I get to hit all of you at the same time because you're all out in the open. But Affliction Warlock is definitely one of the best classes in the game, and that's where I'm going to be putting it. Destro Warlock is going to be low A tier here. So it's still really good. It does really good bolt damage, and you see a good amount of these guys. The only downside to Destro Warlocks is Shamans. Really, if you're not good at fake casting, I wouldn't play it because you have to be able to get bolts off to win. If you can get 2 bolts off every single fear setup, then you're pretty much good to go. Otherwise, that's pretty much that. Next we have is Demo Warlock, which is going to be A as well. It's kind of just a stun bot. I wouldn't say it's necessarily really insane, but it is good. It's still playable. You can still make it work. It's not like, oh, well, I face a Demo Warlock and I win. It's kind of just like, Affliction's better, but Demo Warlock's still playable, and so is Destro. The next we have is going to be Mage. Frost Mage is going to be A plus tier. Really mainly just because of its burst is really okay. Like it's pretty okay. I mean, I wouldn't say it's god tier. I'd say Elemental Shamans and Affliction Warlock and stuff like that. They have the tougher burst. But Frost Mage, their defensive good, is really good. They're able to out dampen a lot of people, which is why they're even playable. Is because they can dampen people out with double block, but in alter time. But that's pretty much that. Next we have is Fire Mage, which is going to be, if I had to legitimately put somewhere, I'd put a B. Now, it is playable in the sense that it does damage. It just takes too much damage. Classes that just literally get 3-shotted are just not going to be very good. This type of meta, you have to dampen people out. Fire Mage is not a dampener spec at the moment. And if you're not a dampener spec, you're going to have a really hard time to compete. So maybe, that's pretty much that. The thing is, you can argue and say Demo Warlock's a dampener, so it's somehow up here. But I think it's just good enough to where it's good. But at the same time, I don't think it's like as good as Frost Mage or Elemental Shaman or I just don't think so at the moment. And then we have Arcane Mage. Arcane Mage, I would say it's low A as well. It does an insane amount of burst and it's great, but again, its survival capabilities aren't the best. You face a BM hunter or really anybody that can actually connect on you, and off your burst, it's just really comp dependent. Overall, Arcane's good if you're facing like people that are stacked. If people are stacked together, you have an infinite amount of burst. The problem is when you're not facing people that stack, because then you're not doing as much damage and you're not doing enough damage to where you can end the game fast. Arcane is not a dampener spec. It is literally meant to do a ton of burst and kill. So I would still say Arcane's really good burst wise, and they're still okay. But compared to Frost Mage, I'd pick a Frost Mage over Arcane any day of the week for a solo shuffle, just because their just survivability is so much better, and that's pretty much that. Their burst is more consistent, where they literally can just burst and do consistent pressure. As an Arcane, you have to set everything up, and while that might be good at the very start of the game, it's going to be harder to get it off, when you're getting trained. The next one we have is going to be Druid. Boomy is going to be A plus tier as well. It has a really good amount of burst. It has a really good amount of CC. You know, Cyclone not being nerfed is the greatest thing about it. You know, having a Root Beam into a Cyclone into like a Bash, that's you yourself. The only bad thing about Boomy is it doesn't have Survival Instinct, so it does die quite fast, kind of like Pharaoh Druid and Wrestler Druid. But you know, you have two versions of Incarn. You have a ton of CC. Everyone loves Boomy, and it's actually really good at the moment. The next one we have is Pharaoh Druid. Pharaoh Druid is a weird spec at the moment. Um, I think it dies too quick. That's the problem that I have with Pharaoh Druid. It just dies so fast, and I think it is good, but I don't think it's S tier anymore for solo shuffle. I honestly think it's better than Boomy because of its damage, but it just dies too quick. Like I very rarely ever watch Crusader face a Pharaoh Druid, but when they do, like that Pharaoh Druid will die in a very quick. Uh, you know, because you have to clone as a Pharaoh Druid. The problem with cloning is, you know, you're getting trained, and by the time you get the fake cast, you're already dead. Like I've had dozens of times where I've literally gone for a clone, and by the time I've gotten the cast, I've been dead because I wasn't sitting in bear form 90% of the game. So while I may think Feral Druid's good burst-wise, its defensive capabilities are trash, absolutely garbage. It's like a rogue with no evasion. It's just not gonna work. It does a lot of damage, and that's the reason it's this high on this list still. But if it got a little bit, you know, buffed defensively, it would easily be one of the better classes in solo shovel. The next one that we have is going to be Wrestler Druid, which is gonna be B tier. Um, you can make it work, but let's be honest, actually, okay, fine. I think just because, you know, the rank 1 cutoffs is like 2450 through 2600, I think it deserves it's still playable. As long as it's playable and it's solid and you can win games consistently, it's good. So I guess it's low A. I wouldn't say it's necessarily insane, but it's just enough to where it's playable. It's better than Holy Priest, that's for sure. The next one that we have is going to be Shaman. Elemental Shaman is also going to be up on this list. If I had to put Ellie up here, I would put it as so far one of the better ones. And for Feral Druid, I would put it here. So I think Ellie's better than Frost Mage. I think Ellie just has so much more to offer. You have Tremor, Grounding, short range kick. That's 10-second CD. You're way more tankier. You might not have two blocks, but you're still tankier, and your burst is more consistent. You don't have to wait 2 minutes for burst. You're bursting every 45 seconds with a ton of burst. That's why you see a lot more elemental shamans than you do really any other class other than like Affliction Warlock. But that's pretty much that. Next we have is Enhancement Shaman, which is also doing really well at the moment. It does insane amount of damage. Now its defensives aren't the best, but however, it does an insane amount of burst. I've never seen a class. I think Enhance probably has the best burst in the game right now. It just does an insane. Like you get about 2 seconds maybe, and they can kill you with 3 HP bars down. They do it, and if it's a good enhance that knows how to use the CDs correctly, they'll one-shot you. It's insane. That's just at the moment. Obviously, if they get a nerf, it's gonna go down, but I still think it competes with the rest of these guys. Um, Again, it's kind of hard to put Pharaoh down here because it does so much damage. I still don't believe Pharaoh is S tier though compared to like Warlock and BM Hunter. I just feel like it dies too quick. Like sure it might do a good amount of damage, but it just dies so quick. But again, it's kind of hard to put this somewhere, and especially in solo shuffle. The next one that we have is going to be Sham, which is going to be A plus tier. I think is actually doing really good. Um, I would say it's probably the fourth or fifth best healer in the game. I think H-Pow, Disc, and Evoker are the best, but Sham's right behind it. You'll see a lot of these guys, and they're actually doing quite well. Way better than they were before. The next one that we have is Warrior. Fury Warrior is also going to be up on this list. I would say it's also in front of Boomy and Enhance. I would probably put behind. I'll put Enhance behind Boomy. Just because Elite's Enhance doesn't have an insane amount of CC, it just has an insane amount of burst. But it's kind of hard to put this somewhere because I rarely see enhancement charms. So just because of that reason, I think it validates them not being A plus tier. And then if I had to move something else from this list here, Okay, I think this looks a little bit. Even if Feral Druid takes a little bit too much damage, I think it's just enough damage to where it deserves to be up in the S tier spot. Just for now, it's not high S tier, but it's like it's still on the list, I think, and I think this looks better. The next one is going to be DK. Unholy DK is going to be A plus tier as well. Um, it's mainly just a consistent bot. It does a lot of good damage, but it's just enough to where it has it. You'll see a good amount of these. I think Frost DK is still better, but Unholy DK, once Frost DK gets nerfed, Unholy DK is easily going to be able to compete with like the rest of these guys. They still do a lot of pressure. They're good defensively. I still think they're really good. And then we have Frost DK, which is going to be, I would say, right here. So, well, yeah, okay. I think Frost DK deserves to be where it's at. Um, if you're facing Frost DK in your lobby, and it's a good Frost DK that can do setups, they literally decimate everybody. They control the entire lobby because they do so much damage that it's just super hard to live, like, especially later in damp. Now that's the one issue they have is they don't survive in damp, but like as long as you get 2 or 3 goes off, so which if you can live 2 minutes, you probably win the game as Frost DK. The next one is going to be I'm not going to be doing blood. We'll go with Evoker, which I think is actually insanely OP. I would say it's behind I'd say it's behind Elemental Shaman in front of everything else. I think Evokers do an insane amount of pressure. They don't really help their team really. They don't have Tremor. They don't have anything to stop CC, but other than kick. But they do just an insanity amount of damage where just like they deserve to be up high up on this list because they do a ton of bursts. It's like a Frost DK caster pretty much. Next we have is Evoker. Evoker is easily S tier. The fact that it counters H-Foul is the reason it's insanely OP in the first place, is because everyone's playing an H-Foul, but H-Foul gets decimated by a Evoker. Same with Wrestle Druid, same with most classes, because they can instantly purge your stuff every 15 seconds, so you're not getting any bops, any hots, none of it. And they do a ton of burst dam, so just really good. And then we have Evoker, which is terrible. You can make it work, but at the same time, let's be honest, it's not going to be very good. You're not going to see rarely any of these guys, and if you do, they're probably barely going 3-3. And then we have Monk. Windwalker Monk is actually pretty high up on this list as well. I would say it's in front of Unholy DK, behind Boomy, and the rest of them. Windwalker does a lot of damage, but it does lack in damp. It will die in dampening, but it is pretty solid. It has enough damage and CDs to make it up on this list as well. Next we have is Mistweaver, which I would also say is A plus tier. I would say it's behind Wrestle Sham and Prez H12 Disc, but it's still better than Wrestle Druid, for sure. Next we have is Priest. Disc Priest is going to be S tier. Has a lot of utility. I don't really like its healing rotation at all, but it's just enough to where it's like it can compete. I wouldn't say its healing can compete, but its utility makes it compete damp, and that's the reason they're so strong, is because of their utility. Their healing sucks. I wish they would do more healing and not just rely off of shields, but that's kind of just how it is. Shadow Priest is also going to be on the A plus tier list. It's doing very well at the moment. If I had to put it somewhere up on this list, I would put it in front of Frost and the rest of these guys, but behind Ellie and Dev. SP does a lot of damage and burst damage, and it helps your team, and that's why it's so high. But I think compared to Ellie and Devoker, they just do so much burst dam that's like, and they don't have to really cast. Like if they're casting, they're literally killing you 100 out consistently. Shadow Priest is kind of like a worse version of Affliction Warlock. It does a lot of dam, has a lot of CC, but it only really does massive dam on its burst. Holy Priest is going to be terrible. Yeah, no, I think it's by far the worst healer spec in the game. It just doesn't have defensive cooldowns, which automatically gets it out of the list here. A healer not having defensive cooldowns for their team in this type of meta, you can't heal 3 people at once. It's just not gonna happen. Not as Holy Priest. By the time you get done with your burst healing, your team's just dead. Everybody has AoE damage nowadays, so you're not just healing one target. You're healing 3 targets all at the same time. It's just not gonna happen. The next one we have is MM which is going to be semi-good in Solo Shuffle after the buffs it's received, but still one of the worst ones. I would say Demo, Arcane, Enhance. I would say Enhance is probably the better. I'd say probably this is bad. I think Enhance is like low A plus tier, possibly. Okay, we'll put it here. I think this looks better. And that's pretty much that. So MM's good, but that's that. Next one we have is going to be what do we have next? BM Hunter, which is going to be the second best spec in the game. It does an insanity amount of burst damage. If people are stacked, the same thing like Pharaoh Druid. If they're stacked, they do unhealable damage. Even if they're not stacked, they do it too. They just have a ton of burst, a ton of CC, and they're really insane. Plus, defensively, they literally have like 4 walls, which makes them almost immortal with Feign Death and Turtle. And then we have Survival Hunter, which I would say it's still not very good. Sure, it does a good amount of damage, but overall, it's not going to be very good compared to like the rest of them. The rest of these specs just do an insanity amount of burst. Survival has a good amount of burst and CC, but compared to these other specs, like it's just not even close. Like these guys just do an insanity amount of burst. Every one of these specs up here do insane burst damage, even Unholy DK, especially Enhancement Shaman, which I would say is here. The next one we have is going to be Rogue. Assassination Rogue is also going to be very high up on this list as well. And if I had to legitimately put it somewhere up on here, I would put it probably here. I think Frost DK, Fury Warrior, Frost Mage, and the rest of them, they just overall are better. I think Assassination is just an annoying spec that works with a lot of classes like Affliction Warlocks and stuff like that, where it just does just enough to where it can dampen you out. But defensive, it can die insanely fast. If you've ever gone a rogue, they die in 3 goes. But nobody seems to go them because if a rogue gets a lucky lobby with like a caster or somebody that dies even quicker, then they can do it. If you allow a rogue to do whatever he wants, he'll be one of the better classes in the game. But if you actually go him, he ain't gonna be able to do nothing. Then we have Outlaw Rogue. Outlaw Rogue, I still believe I don't in solo shuffle I don't believe it's that good, but just for the trolls, I'll put it here. So just because it does CC and it does a good amount of burst damage, and it is good dampener wise, I'm gonna put it here. So it is solid. It deserves on the A plus tier list just because it's still just enough to where it can get there. But that's pretty much it. Then we have Sub Rogue, which is ungodly awful. I would say it's still better than MM, but worse than the other ones here. The next one we have is DH. After the buffs, um, I would still say it's really bad. Um, I'd say damage wise, it can compete above the 3 here or the 4 all the way down. But overall, it still dies. It's just overall, you're not out. You're not being a dampener as a DH. You need to win games quick because after your evasion, you're gonna flop like a bag of potatoes. The next one we have here is gonna be Rat Paladin, also another class that's gonna be very high up on the list. Um, if I had to put it somewhere up on here, I would put it right here. So just utility wise and burst wise, it automatically is probably one of the most best melees in the game. You got bubble, lay on hands, bop, sack every minute. You have your own cooldowns. You have sync. It's just you have a lot of things, and your burst is incredible. You can either hit somebody from 3 million to 1.5. Like on their burst, they are strong. The next one we have is going to be H-Pow, which is going to be, I would say, the second best healer in the game. You can run Lightsmith or Herald. I usually run Herald because Lightsmith is kind of just a boring spec. It's like a wannabe Fistweaver, but you can play whatever you want. Still a really insane healer. Has 2 bops, land hands, sack, bubble, freedoms. It just has a lot of utility. And then we have Arms Warrior, which is actually not terrible. If I had to legitimately put it somewhere, though, I would probably still I put it like the very low. So I think it's just enough to where it can compete, but it's like low. Um or maybe not. Again, it's kind of hard. I feel like I haven't really seen an Arms Warrior in a very long time, so I can't really say. I think okay, I think that I don't think they're good enough at the moment to be competing with like the rest of those guys. So I will put it in front of DH and the rest of these, but I think it just needs more consistency or better burst. Like, again, if you're going to rely a class solely on burst, it literally needs to kill you in 3 seconds, or it's not good. That's just kind of how it is. It is really good at dampening, but overall, Fury Warrior is going to just dump Stern Arms Warrior. So that's pretty much the end of the tier list, ladies and gentlemen, for the solo shuffle. Try to put a little bit more stuff in the A tier instead of just putting it all in the A plus tier. So all these classes you're going to see, so from Outlaw Rogue, maybe not Outlaw Rogue and Unholy DK, but from Windwalker up, you're going to see this class as a lot in Solo Shuffle. But that's pretty much it. If I had to move something just real quick at the moment, just like last ending thing, I would probably go here, and I would probably go here. So that's the tier list, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm only putting Outlaw Rogue, this rogue because I literally haven't. Nobody plays this spec. That's the problem. Nobody plays it. If people aren't playing, if you don't see this every 10 or every 5 games, it's not a good spec. You see every one of these specs every other game in a solo shuffle. I never see an Outlaw Rogue or any of these other specs. You might see a Destro Warlock or a Demo or maybe even an Arcane every now and then, but otherwise, these are the main specs. This is what you're gonna want to play. Like nobody, you're rarely ever gonna see these other ones, and if you do, they're gonna get. It's either the best players or the worst. That's kind of how it is. So let me know what you guys thought about this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video.